Hello, everyone. Welcome to day two of DevOps Complete course. In day two, I'm going to talk about software development lifecycle, which is also abbreviated as SDLC. A quick recap of what we have covered in our day one session. In our day one session, we spoke about what is DevOps, why DevOps, and day to day activities of a DevOps engineer. Thank you, everyone, for watching my day one video. I believe you would have learned something about what DevOps is and what are the daily activities of a DevOps engineer, which is very much important from interview perspective also, because normally it's been asked in interview, what are the daily activities of a DevOps engineer? And based on the answer which you provide, it's been judged, your real-time experiences is judged. So anyone who did not watch day one video, please go ahead and watch day one video. Now, in day two, I'm going to talk about software development lifecycle, and I'm going to spend complete time in discussing about software development lifecycle, because it doesn't matter which organization you belong to, either it's a startup or it's a MNC or it's a MAG company, it's a unicorn. Everywhere organizations, everywhere each of the company follow software development life cycle in order to develop any product, in order to work with any client, in order to develop any of the components. They certainly follow certain software development software development life cycle, which is also abbreviated as SDLC. Now there are three on high level, on very high level, I'll say there are three basic important components of software development lifecycle, which you can also see. The first thing is design. So what is design? Let's try to understand that in the first place. Now, design is something which is a idea or which is the thought process of development of the product based on the requirement which comes from client. Client can come up with any requirement. Say in case if you have to develop any application, let it be any application. It can be mobile application, it can be application which you normally use in your laptop. Any application comes with a requirement in the first place, requirement based on what actually customer needs, what actually consumer needs, because any of the company when builds any product, it they are going to build the product because they want to sell the product to consumers who are going to consume those products, who is going to consume those application. So based on the requirement which comes from company, a design is created, and that is the first thing. Based on the design, development happens. And what is development? Development is like coding work which is done by all the developers, based on which all the application which we whatever we see, the application which we use, let it be in mobile based application or let it be the PC based application, everything is having a code at the back end. So now based on the design, development happens. Now when the development completes, the next stage begins is testing. Now, all these three components are quite integrated with each other. You cannot perform develop without having a proper design. You cannot work on testing until unless you complete your development. Now, a question will come in your mind, why do we perform testing? Because I understand development happens because designing is important, because based on the designing, development has to commence. Now, development is important because based on the development, testing has to commence. But why testing is important? Why can't we deliver the product which is designed properly and which is developed properly? Because what is the end goal here? The end goal is not just to design or develop the product, but to deliver the product to consumers, which consumer is certainly going to like. And what kind of product you want to deliver to customers? You would like to deliver to customer a high quality product, a high quality product, right? You just do not want to deliver anything to consumers. You want to deliver a high quality product to consumers. Now, in order to have the high quality product, testing plays a very important role. Without a proper testing, without until unless you complete a proper testing, you cannot deliver a high quality product to consumers. For delivering a high quality product to consumers, testing plays a vital role. So whatever it's been designed, whatever it's been developed, that gets tested thoroughly. Post that, it gets delivered to consumers and users basically. Now, it's not as in these are the only three components. There can be more than three components also, but these three are high level and commonly, very commonly used component across all the industries. Now, let's come back again to the definition part of SDLC. So, say in case if somebody asks you, so it might happen that in an interview, it's asked, okay, fine, define SDLC. So, how will you define SDLC? SDLC, we can say, like the way we have seen in our day one session also, we learned about DevOps. What is DevOps? DevOps is a culture, it's a mindset. Quite similar to that, SDLC is also a culture, it's a mindset which ensures a high quality product is delivered to customers. And how high quality product is delivered to customers? To have a proper design, to have proper development done on top of the design, and to have thorough testing done on the development activity which is done. So, in very basic terms, if I have to define SDLC, I'll say SDLC is a culture or a mindset which is used to deliver high quality product to customers. And in order to deliver high quality product to customers, it is pretty much important to have a proper, a well defined design. On the basis of design, a proper development is done, and on the basis of and whatever it's been developed, it gets tested thoroughly. This we can say as a proper definition for SDLC. Now, let's try to understand with SDLC with some examples. I'll try to present it with some very basic examples on the product which we use very commonly. Now, we all use e-commerce website quite usually. Let it be Amazon, let it be Flipkart, let it be eBay, let it be Walmart. A very commonly used platform in today's world is e-commerce. If you have to purchase something, we go online, we reach out to e-commerce website and we try to purchase products of our own choice. Now, consider that you are working for an e-commerce company. Let the name be example.com to avoid using any name of any well-known company. I'm just keeping the name as example.com, and this example.com can be anything. It can be Flipkart, it can be Amazon, it can be anything which you can think about, any of the e-commerce website which you can think about. It is that company. Now consider that the existing platform of example.com is already offering the feature of education. Under education, they are trying to sell you, they are trying to allow you to purchase books of your choice. They're also allowing you to choose household items of your choice. They're also allowing you to choose clothes, and that clothes could be of anyone, men, women, kids, anyone. They're also allowing you to choose apparels. These are the existing feature. Now they want to enhance their capacity, they want to enhance their capability. And what they say is, other than these four existing components, we should also plan for some future development. And those future development could be anything. Just for the name's sake, I mentioned three components which could be a future plan by this e-commerce company, example.com. The first one is electronics item. First one is electronics item, which they want to develop the feature. Second is some audio devices. Third one is some media component. Just for namesake, I kept three different examples. Now the requirement popped up. Some CTO of the company said that, okay, fine. Other than these four existing components, let's add these all new features also, electronic items, audio device, and media equipments. A requirement came from CTO of the company. Now, CTO can give any set of requirements, but who is going to deliver it? That delivery, that development has to be done by engineers, DevOps engineers, developers, testing team members. They have to sit together, they have to work together to work on the requirement and then to complete the requirement and finally to create, to do the enhancement or to do the modification to add new feature which finally reaches to customers. Now what happens on the top of a requirement which came from CTO? We need to perform the planning part. We need to do some planning. In the planning, what we decide a number of things in planning. We decide, okay, fine, if I am talking about, say, electronic items, then electronic items of which category? There could be different electronic items. They could be TV, there could be audio devices, there could be some other electronic devices, laptop, desktop, monitor, which all electronic devices we are referring to here. So under planning phase, we discuss all these things. If I talk about TV items only, then TV items of what budget? Is it too costly? Is it too cheap? Is it of medium ranges? All these things are discussed under planning phase, and a well-defined plan is prepared, on the basis of which development begins, or on the basis of which further cycle or further processes continues. I just kept everything in a circle. Why everything I kept in a circle? Because almost all the company has to follow these all steps, and these all are the standards. These all are not the standards which is followed by any specific company. These standards, which is planning, documentation, designing, building, testing, and deployment, these are the standard which is followed by all the company who deals with software development lifecycle. So these are the fundamental standards for software development lifecycle, which begins with planning part. After the requirement is gathered, under the planning, all the things are decided, all the small big components are discussed, based on which further steps processes. So under planning decides, for example, if the future plan is this, if you talk about this is the future plan, if you talk about this as the future plan, then quite the same thing is discussed under planning. Which electronic item, which electronic item we are referring to? There could be many different electronics items. So which electronic item? What range of electronic item we are talking about? Everything is discussed. And once it's been planned, post that, next stage triggers documentation. Everything gets documented so that we do not deviate from original plan. We do not deviate from what we have actually agreed on what the basic requirement is. So post the planning is done, next stage is to have the documentation created. Everything gets documented properly, which is further followed. Now, after documentation completes, next thing which comes up is designing. So now designing is again a very, very important thing, because on the basis of designing, furthermore activities or furthermore stages gets triggered. So designing is basically of, we can just categorize designing under two sections. One is HLD and another is LLD. So HLD stands for high level design. To HLD, we can say high level design. To LLD, we can say low level design. So, what is high level design? What is low level design? Let's try to understand that part pretty much well. High level design is like, consider that you have actually introduced the feature of electronic items, and that even you have decided, okay, consider that electronic item which you want to introduce as a part of your e-commerce website is, say, TV. Now, under high level design, you would like to introduce the feature of how well you can scale out the the feature which is which is introduced in your e-commerce website, which is allowing consumers to perform the purchase. Because the purchase or the rate of purchase, I'll say, can increase or reduce based on some specific occasions. For example, if I talk about some festive season, your let it be your Christmas season, or let it be any of the Indian festivals, your spike could be high. But in normal days, perhaps the spike is, perhaps the rate of purchasing the product is pretty much low. Now, under high level design, you have to decide whether you want to scale out your product based on the customer needs or based on the demand which customer places on some specific occasion or not. And in order to scale out, do you want to use containerization facility? Do you want to use Kubernetes? and deploy everything on pods. I'm using these all technical terms like containerization, Kubernetes, pods, scaling out, scaling in, which I'm going to talk about in our upcoming session also, just to give a kind of gist or give a kind of high level idea what high level design comprises of and how it is different from low level design. I'm using these technical terms at this point. So yes, under high level design, we can just put multiple features. Under a high level design, we can just introduce about scaling. We can introduce about deployment patterns. We can also talk about containerization. Containerization. Now, this is high level design. What happens in low level design in that case? In low level design, we talk about some very low level components. Like, say, in case if the customer data is present, then the customer data is going to present in Cosmos DB or it is going to present in SQL DB. Whether I want to perform the deployment on cloud or I want to keep it native, these all designs are performed on these all designing or discussion is decided on low level designing. For example, if I talk about uh, some more examples of low level designs, consider that you do have architects in your organization. Every organization, for every project, there is some architect. Architect decides whether which function you are going to use in which programming language or which programming language has to be used in the first place. Is it Java? Is it Python? Is it .NET? Is it Ruby? Is it some other which we have to use? Which other programming languages which I have to use to develop the product? Now, when I'm using Python, so in Python, which all type of functions I have to use? Which all type of databases I have to use for the application data to hold, for the consumer data to hold, falls under low level design. So these all falls under low level design. So under low level design, to give some examples, so which programming language, programming language to use, which database to use, which databases to use, these all components falls under your designing part. Now, this is something planning, documentation, designing is something which you being a DevOps engineer will less be involved into. You will be more involved into building, testing, and deployment. It's not as in you cannot get involved into planning, documentation, and designing. Say in case if you do have that instinct to participate in designing, you can design also. Say in case if you are a senior level DevOps engineer, certainly you can participate in designing and documentation and planning part also. Or say in case if you actually show interest in designing, then you can perform designing, and based on the designing you can drive all other features of building, testing, and deployment also. So it's not as in anybody is going to stop you in performing or in participating in planning, documentation, and designing. But what I'm trying to say is your majorly you will contributing in building, testing, and deployment, and streamlining these three components of building, testing, and deployment. So what is basically building? What is basically testing? What is basically deployment? Right? And these all things are in cycle. So let's try to understand building, testing, and deployment in more detail. I'll go to another slide, but I'll again come back to this slide in few minutes. So what is building, testing, and deployment? So our prime focus being a DevOps engineer is going to be in building, testing, deployment. So building is nothing but development activity wherein developers participate in developing and writing all the source code, which finally is going to develop the application for you. Now, once developer writes the code, post that what happens? Once developer is done with the code, post that developer pushes the code to a version control system, right? In today's world, the most famous version control system is Git. Don't worry if you don't know about Git. In our upcoming sessions, I'm going to talk about Git in very detail, wherein I'll demonstrate you the usage of Git, various commands which we use in Git. But what happens is whenever developer writes a code, developer pushes the code, developer publishes the code to version control system, which is say Git. Now, Developer whenever writes the code, developer tests the code in their local environment also. Whatever, say developer has written the code by using some IDE, some integrated development environment which is configured in developer's laptop. Then what he is going to do, he is going to test the application, he is going to test the code in their in their laptop also, but that won't be recognized. Right. So in case if the developer is writing the code and tested the code in developer, we cannot just deploy the code in production environment and take it to consumers. No, it has to be tested thoroughly by sub testing team. So testing team will be there. Those testing team will ensure that the code or the development activity which is done by developer is matching with the requirement, with the current requirement or not. So what happens in case of testing? So testing team is again Q&A team, which is quality assurance team, quite the same thing which we discussed in our day one session also. This QA team participates a lot in testing framework. They test it based on various sort of test cases. There is a testing servers also, which is created by system engineer. System engineer creates the testing server. We have seen that in our day one session also. System engineer creates the server where the code finally is pushed, and QA team, quality assurance team, ensures that the the deployment or the code or the development which is done by developer is in line with the requirement or not. And after this has been done, the code gets promoted, prod promotion done, which finally reaches to consumers, or which finally reaches to, or to consumers, I can say they are also, consumers are also known as customers, right? Consumers are also known as customers. So we can say consumers are customers. So finally the deployment happens, and after deployment completes, the product reaches to consumers or customers. So you will be highly involved in performing these activities itself. Now, what you are going to do? Now, a question might be there in your mind that, okay, fine, development is done by this part is done by, so this part is considered, a question might be there in your mind that, okay, fine, development is done by, this thing is done by, this thing is done by developer, this thing is done by QA team member, and this prod promotion again might be, I will be involved into, I being a DevOps engineer will be involved into prod promotion, maybe being in DevOps role, I will be involved into prod promotion. So is this the only activity which I'm going to do? This question might come in your mind. So no, you will not be only involved into prod promotion, but you will be involved in performing all these three activity of building, testing, and deployment. How? Let's try to understand this. You will be involved into these activity following, because nowadays we do have agile methodology, DevOps methodology, lots of frameworks are there wherein requirement is all the designing, or all the designing part is not done at once. Designing is also done in smaller chunks. Now, once a chunk is designed, the chunk gets developed, that part gets developed, and post that it gets deployed. It is delivered to production environment, which eventually reaches to customer. So what your job will be? Your job will be, being a DevOps engineer, to create that pipeline, to automate everything, right? Your job here will be to automate these all components. You will be highly involved in automating these components, in automation. So you will be involved in automation. You will be involved in performing automation. You will automate all these stages of deployment, testing, building. How we will automate? You will automate everything by creation of pipelines, which we are going to talk about in our upcoming sessions also. So all these thing goes in cycle. Everything, all these thing goes in a cycle. Okay, all these things goes in a cycle wherein all these thing happens in a sequence. So everything happens in a cycle. It's not as in you can skip any of the part. And you, being a DevOps engineer, will be involved in creating pipelines, achieving automation. And why you will do this? You will, by achieving automation, you will speed up the process. You will ensure that everything is done in a faster way. It's nothing is manual. So your job will be to avoid manual. Your job will be to avoid any of the manual component, right? You will be trying to avoid any of the manual component. Avoid this, so you will highly be avoiding these components of manual. No, but you will be working on achieving automation with the use of pipeline. So this is software development life cycle. So I'll give a brief why software development life cycle is pretty much important. Software development life cycle is pretty much important because with software development life cycle, any of the organization creates a mindset, creates a strategy, creates a pattern by means of which development, testing, and prod promotion happens in an automated fashion, happens quite faster, and also things things can be arranged. All these deployment or development pattern can be arranged following the current way of deployment methodology, like agile methodology, where everything happens in a chunk. Not everything happens all together, everything happens in small pieces, and each of the piece, when it gets developed, reaches out to customers, and the customer is able to take an advantage of it. This is what software development lifecycle is. Okay, everyone. So this is all about SDLC. This is all about SDLC, which you need to know in order to start working on any of the DevOps framework. SDLC is very, very important thing because until unless you understand SDLC properly, you will not be able to grasp the entire flow of how the pipeline works or how beneficial any of the DevOps pipeline or automation which you are going to achieve being a DevOps engineer will be helpful. So I thank everyone for watching my day two videos. Just stay tuned because in my upcoming session, I'm going to come with lots of more wonderful videos. I'll be presenting lots of hands-on demo stuffs also, which will be very helpful for you. End-to-end pipeline is already waiting for you. So stay there with me. And in case if you're liking my session, don't forget to hit on like button